In the depths of the rural moors lies the village of Eversha, a place where the fog hangs heavy and the wind carries whispers of forgotten tales. It is a village untouched by time, where ancient stones and dark woods guard secrets as old as the land itself. Among these, none is more enigmatic or feared than the Crenshaw house. Perched ominously on a cliff overlooking the village, this derelict mansion has been the source of local legends and superstitions for generations. Once a grand estate, Crenshaw House is now a shadow of its former self, its windows boarded up, its gardens overrun with wild thorns. The house was last inhabited by Alistair Crenshaw, a reclusive scholar with an obsession for the occult. His sudden and mysterious disappearance decades ago left the house abandoned, fueling rumors of cursed halls and haunted rooms. Despite, or perhaps because of, its sinister reputation, Crenshaw House attracts the curiosity of many, from thrill-seekers to ghost hunters. But none have dared to probe its secrets as deeply as Maria Solano, a journalist with a penchant for the paranormal. Driven by a blend of professional ambition and personal fascination, Maria sets out to uncover the truths hidden within the dilapidated walls of Crenshaw House. With her keen eye and steadfast resolve, Maria ventures into the heart of darkness, seeking to shed light on the shadows that linger in the mansion. Armed with her camera, recorder, and an insatiable curiosity, she is prepared to face whatever the house reveals. But as she will soon discover, some doors, once opened, cannot be closed, and the truths unearthed may haunt her far beyond the confines of the haunted mansion. This is her journey into a place where the past is not dead, where every whisper and shadow holds the echo of Alistair's dark legacy. Here, in the eerie silence of the Crenshaw house, Maria will confront her deepest fears and perhaps encounter the very essence of the supernatural. Maria's car wound through the dense fog that clung to the moors of Evershade, the old headlights struggling against the oppressive gray that swallowed the landscape. As the road twisted through the overgrown wilderness, the silhouette of the Crenshaw house loomed suddenly out of the mist, a stark, imposing structure perched on the edge of an eroding cliff. Pulling up to the gate, Maria's heart skipped a beat. The iron bars were twisted and overgrown with ivy, the gate creaking ominously as she pushed it open. Her boots crunched on the gravel, the sound unnervingly loud in the quiet of the dusk. The air was chilly, carrying whispers of the past that danced around the edges of her consciousness. The house itself was a relic of Gothic architecture, its once grand features now marred by years of neglect. Statues that lined the path to the front door were eroded and moss-covered, their faces worn away by time, giving them an eerie, faceless quality. Maria paused, her camera hanging heavily around her neck, the lens fogging slightly in the cool air. She stepped onto the porch, the wood groaning under her weight. Her hand hesitated at the door, the old metal knocker cold and uninviting. With a deep breath, she let it fall, the sound echoing through the empty halls beyond. As the echo died away, a chill ran down her spine. She was not alone. A light flickered in the upper window, then disappeared as quickly as it had appeared. Determined to keep her fear at bay, Maria pushed the door open. It creaked loudly, swinging inward to reveal a grand foyer covered in dust and draped in cobwebs. The once luxurious furnishings were now mere shadows under dust sheets, and the air smelled of mold and decay. Her flashlight pierced the darkness, casting long shadows as she stepped inside. The house whispered around her, the sound of her footsteps muffled by the thick dust that carpeted the floor. She could almost hear the echo of past conversations, the laughter of ghosts long gone. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation, as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for her to uncover its secrets. Maria set up her base in the foyer, arranging her equipment carefully on an old oak table that stood resolute against time. She spread out the map she had made of the house, marking her intended path through its corridors and rooms. Each step was planned, but nothing could truly prepare her for what awaited inside the walls of the Crenshaw house. As she prepared her camera and switched on her voice recorder, a sudden movement caught her eye. A shadow passed quickly across the grand staircase at the end of the hall, too quick to be natural. Maria's pulse quickened, and she clutched her flashlight tighter. "This is Maria Solano, starting my investigation of the Crenshaw house," she spoke into the recorder, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "It's approximately 7 p.m., and the activity is already beginning. With her equipment ready and her senses alert, Maria began her slow, deliberate exploration of the house. Each room told a story of decay and forgotten glory, and each shadow hinted at secrets waiting to be uncovered. As the night deepened, so too did the mystery of the Crenshaw house, pulling Maria deeper into its dark heart. After exploring the dimly lit, expansive rooms on the ground floor of Crenshaw House, Maria proceeded to the library, guided by her flashlight and the occasional flicker of lightning illuminating the stained glass windows. The library, a vast room lined with towering bookshelves, was the heart of many local legends, tales of hidden rooms and forgotten lore that Alastair Crenshaw was rumored to have obsessed over. As she entered, the musty smell of old books and leather filled the air. Her flashlight beam danced across the room, highlighting titles that spoke of arcane sciences and ancient histories, their gold lettering worn by time. The room felt alive with the echo of Alastair's intellectual pursuits, and Maria felt a surge of adrenaline. This was why she had come. Pushing aside her awe, she methodically began her investigation, her recorder capturing the soft thuds of her footsteps and the distant thunder outside. Maria examined the room, pulling at books and tapping on walls, searching for the secret mechanisms that local lore hinted at. Her persistence paid off when a particular book, a large, dusty tome titled The Shadow Realms by an unknown author, triggered a soft click when pulled. A section of the bookshelf creaked and slowly swung open, revealing a dark, narrow passage. Maria's heart raced as she shone her light down the corridor. It was just as the stories had described, a hidden passage within the Crenshaw house, possibly leading to Alastair's private study. Equipped with her camera and recorder, Maria ventured into the passage. The air grew colder as she progressed, and the narrow walls seemed to close in around her. She emerged into a small, circular room, entirely different in character from the rest of the house. This was undoubtedly Alastair's sanctuary, a place of private rituals and studies. In the center of the room stood a large desk, cluttered with papers, old photographs, and a variety of esoteric artifacts. Maria began to sift through the items, documenting each discovery. Among the assortment, she found a personal journal, its pages yellowed and handwriting nearly faded. It was Alastair Crenshaw's diary. Flipping through the diary, Maria uncovered entries that detailed Alastair's descent into madness. His writings spoke of visions, otherworldly voices, and a pact with something he referred to only as the Shadow. It became clear that Alastair had been involved in something far beyond ordinary scholarly pursuits. In the back of the diary, tucked between the binding, was a loose page marked with a strange, intricate symbol that seemed to pulse under Maria's flashlight. It was a drawing of the same pattern engraved on the floor of the room, surrounding a dark, ash-filled brazier. Alastair's notes referred to this symbol as the gateway. As Maria examined the symbol more closely, the air in the room thickened. The shadows seemed to creep closer, almost palpably, and the faint whispering Maria had grown accustomed to intensified. It was no longer just echoes, now it sounded like a direct communication. Frightened but compelled, Maria set up her camera to record the symbol and the room. As she spoke into her recorder, summarizing her findings, she realized she was not just uncovering Alastair's secrets, she was activating something long dormant within the house. The whispers grew louder, urging her on, and despite the fear clawing at her mind, Maria knew she was on the verge of a breakthrough. She had discovered the true heart of the Crenshaw house, and there was no turning back. Maria stood at the threshold of a revelation, the air around her crackling with the static of unseen energies as the whispers grew more insistent. They no longer felt like mere echoes of the past, they seemed almost tangible, a chorus of the damned that clawed at the edges of her sanity. Armed with her camera, Maria documented every inch of Alastair Crenshaw's private study, the chill of the room seeping into her bones. The diary entries, the enigmatic symbol, and the surrounding artifacts suggested that Alastair had delved into realms beyond human understanding, contacting entities that promised power at a terrible cost. As Maria pored over Alastair's notes, she began to piece together the rituals he had performed. It was clear that these were not mere theoretical exercises. Alastair had actively sought to bridge our world with another, darker realm. The symbols, the arrangements of the artifacts, and the shadowy brazier, all were components of a ritual that seemed focused on summoning something he had referred to only as the shadow beyond. Feeling a mix of dread and intrigue, Maria decided to explore further into the mansion, following the trail of Alistair's experiments. She ventured back through the hidden passage to the library and from there, moved deeper into the house. Each room seemed to have its own story, its own eerie character, affected by whatever Alistair had unleashed decades ago. In the dining hall, the air felt oppressively thick, and the temperature dropped noticeably. Maria's breath fogged in the air as she entered. The walls were lined with portraits, their eyes seeming to follow her every movement. Here, the whispers turned into murmurs, fragmented phrases that begged her to turn back, warning of the darkness to come. Ignoring the pleas, Maria continued, her recorder capturing every sound, every whisper. She found herself drawn to the grand ballroom, an expansive room with a large chandelier hanging precariously from the ceiling, its crystals dulled by time and neglect. In the center of the room lay a grand piano, its keys dusty but intact. As she approached, a dissonant chord rang out as if played by an invisible hand, sending shivers down her spine. The whispers crescendoed into coherent voices. They recounted fragmented tales of past rituals, of gatherings where the veil between worlds was thinned, of Alistair's descent into madness as he gave in to the shadowy whispers. The piano played sporadically, notes tumbling out in a cacophony that seemed to mirror the chaos that had once reigned in this room. Realizing the significance of the ballroom in Alistair's story, Maria set up her equipment to capture any phenomena. As she adjusted her camera, the temperature dropped further, and a low mist began to form, swirling around her feet. Her flashlight flickered as she scanned the room, and in the mirror that dominated one wall, she caught a glimpse of a shadowy figure standing behind her. Whirling around, her heart in her throat, Maria found nothing but the empty room behind her. Breathing heavily, she reviewed the footage from her camera. There it was, a shadowy figure, its form blurry and indistinct, vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. This evidence was undeniable, Maria was not alone. Whatever Alistair had summoned with his rituals still lingered in the mansion, bound to the physical world by his actions. As she gathered her courage, Maria realized that the whispers were not just warnings, they were a guide, leading her to uncover the full extent of Alistair's dark legacy. With a mix of fear and determination, she prepared to delve deeper into the mysteries of the Crenshaw house, knowing that the true nature of the shadow beyond might soon reveal itself. Maria's investigation had reached a critical point. The presence of the shadowy figure in the ballroom footage confirmed that the entity Alistair had summoned still haunted the mansion. She realized she was no longer just a bystander or mere investigator, she was now an active participant in the unfolding story of the Crenshaw house. Armed with Alistair's diary and notes from his study, Maria sought to understand the ritual that had bound the entity to the house. She hypothesized that replicating aspects of the ritual might allow her to communicate with the entity or possibly even sever its ties to this world. She returned to Alistair's study, where she spent hours translating his cryptic notes and diagrams. The ritual required the alignment of several elements around the enigmatic symbol in the study, the same symbol that had reacted under her flashlight's beam. Among these elements were specific artifacts that Alistair had collected, some of which were still scattered around the mansion. Maria gathered these items, an ancient mirror with a frame carved in disturbing, sinuous patterns, a set of tarnished silver candlesticks, and a small, obsidian knife. Each item resonated with a palpable energy, humming softly as if responding to the nearness of the other artifacts. By midnight, Maria had arranged everything in accordance with Alistair's diagrams. She placed the mirror so it reflected the symbol on the floor, set the candlesticks at cardinal points around the perimeter, and placed the knife at the center. The storm outside had intensified, thunder echoing the unrest within the mansion. With her camera recording, Maria began the incantation written in Alistair's diary. Her voice was steady at first, reciting the strange, archaic phrases that felt unnerving to speak aloud. As she continued, the air in the room thickened, shadows curling at the edges of her vision. Suddenly, the temperature dropped sharply. The candles flickered wildly, casting grotesque shadows that danced along the walls. A gust of wind slammed the study door shut, causing Maria to jump. But she did not stop. She felt compelled to finish what she had started. The mirror began to fog from the edges, and within its misty surface, Maria saw the vague outline of a face, its features twisted in sorrow and rage. The entity was manifesting, responding to the ritual. Maria's heart raced, but her fear was tempered by an intense need to know the truth. "Who are you?" Maria called out, her voice echoing in the suddenly icy room. "What do you want?" The entity's voice was a mere whisper, yet it filled the room, resonant and full of ancient grief. "Release," it hissed, its voice overlapping with the howling wind outside. Maria understood then that the entity was trapped, bound to the mansion not just by Alistair's ritual but by its own unfulfilled desires. It was a prisoner of both the physical and spectral worlds, and it believed Maria could free it. As the entity's whispers grew more urgent, the room seemed to spin. Maria, driven by a mix of duty and compassion, knew she had to make a decision. She could attempt to complete the ritual to release the entity, risking her own safety in the process, or she could try to banish it, potentially condemning it to eternal unrest. With resolve steeling her nerves, Maria chose to attempt the release. She repeated the final phrases of the incantation, her voice clear and strong amidst the chaos. As she spoke, the obsidian knife glowed with a black light, and the air shimmered as if the fabric of reality was thinning. The climax of the ritual was near, and Maria felt the weight of her decision. She was about to uncover the final secrets of the Crenshaw house, or perhaps become another lost soul within its walls. As Maria recited the last words of the ritual, the room shook violently, sending shivers through the very foundation of the Crenshaw house. The air became electric, charged with a palpable tension as if the house itself resisted the change about to be unleashed. The obsidian knife at the center of the symbol pulsed with a dark light, growing brighter with each syllable Maria uttered. The entity in the mirror began to take a more definite shape, its features still twisted but now clearly desperate, caught between realms. Its eyes, full of ancient sorrow and malice, locked onto Maria's, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. "Freedom," the entity whispered, its voice echoing around the room and in Maria's mind. The word was a plea and a promise, filled with longing and the pain of centuries. Maria felt a surge of sympathy for the creature, trapped by Alistair Crenshaw's ambition and malpractice. But as the ritual neared completion, the entity's demeanor shifted subtly. The sorrow in its eyes gave way to a gleam of something more cunning, more dangerous. It was then Maria realized the risk of what she might be unleashing upon the world. Driven by a sudden urgency to make a decision, she glanced at Alistair's notes scattered around the room. Her eyes caught a hastily scribbled margin note that hadn't seemed important before: "Beware the guise of the trapped, for their chains are often self-wrought." This warning echoed in her mind as she reconsidered her next steps. The ritual designed to free the entity could just as easily be twisted to bind it further or banish it, depending on her actions. With a deep breath, Maria reached for the obsidian knife, its surface now thrumming with an otherworldly energy. "Forgive me," she whispered, not sure to whom she spoke, the entity or herself. Redirecting the flow of the ritual, she altered her incantation, weaving in a binding clause that Alistair had outlined as a contingency. The entity roared in betrayal and fury as it realized her intent. The mirror cracked, splintering the reflected image as the room darkened. Shadows writhed and twisted around Maria, forming tendrils that reached for her with spectral fingers. The wind howled, and the candles snuffed out, plunging the room into darkness. Using the knife as a conduit, Maria channeled all her focus into completing the binding. She recited the new incantation with all the force her lungs could muster, each word a seal of containment. The floor symbol glowed intensely, trapping the entity within its boundaries. After what seemed like an eternity, the tumult subsided. The shadows receded, and the air cleared, the oppressive atmosphere lifting slightly. The entity was contained once again, its form stabilized but confined within the mirror, its eyes now smoldering coals of subdued rage. Maria collapsed to the floor, exhausted and shaken. She had faced the unknown and had been forced to make a choice that weighed heavily on her conscience. The house was quiet now, a silence that was both a relief and a haunting reminder of what now lay bound in the study. In the aftermath, Maria gathered her recordings and notes. She had documented everything, capturing not only evidence of the supernatural but also her own journey into the heart of darkness. As she prepared to leave the mansion, she knew that the story she had to tell was no longer just about ghosts and haunted houses. It was about the human spirit, its capacity for compassion, and the burdens of choice. Stepping outside as the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, Maria looked back at the Crenshaw house. It was a monument to both human folly and resilience. She walked away with a heavy heart, knowing she had prevented a potential disaster but wondering about the morality of her decision. The world remained unaware of how close it had come to a darker fate, and Maria carried with her the secret of the Crenshaw house, a secret she would guard to ensure no one else would attempt to unlock the horrors she had faced. In the days following her harrowing experience at the Crenshaw house, Maria found herself grappling with the echoes of her ordeal. The quiet of her apartment was a stark contrast to the relentless whispers and chilling encounters within the mansion's walls, yet the silence seemed just as oppressive, filled with the weight of her memories. Maria spent long hours reviewing the audio and visual recordings she had made, each replay bringing a fresh wave of realization about the gravity of what she had encountered. The footage was more than just evidence of supernatural phenomena, it was a testament to the thin line between realms that she had tread. As she compiled her findings into a coherent narrative, Maria was acutely aware of the responsibility she carried, to convey not just the story but the warning it embodied. Her article, when it finally went live, was met with immediate viral attention. Readers were captivated and chilled by the detailed account of her exploration, her confrontation with the entity, and her ultimate decision to bind it once again. While most praised her bravery and quick thinking, others questioned the ethics of her actions, sparking a debate that spread across forums and social media. Amid the public discourse, Maria found herself contacted by both skeptics and believers. Paranormal researchers sought her out, eager to learn more about the symbols and rituals Alistair had used, while spiritualists expressed concern over the implications of her encounter. Maria engaged with these communities cautiously, mindful of the dangerous knowledge contained within her recordings. As weeks turned into months, Maria's experience at Crenshaw House continued to haunt her. She found herself drawn to other haunted locations, driven by a mix of fear and fascination. Yet, she approached each new investigation with a heightened sense of caution, always aware of the potential consequences of meddling with unknown forces. Her reputation as a paranormal journalist grew, and with it, her access to darker, more hidden stories that lay on the fringes of the known. Each new venture was a dive into the depths of human fear and the supernatural, but Maria was no longer the same fearless explorer she had once been. The shadows of Crenshaw House followed her, a constant reminder of the night she had altered the fabric of reality. Eventually, Maria took a step back from field investigations, turning instead to write a book detailing her experiences. In it, she explored not only the paranormal but also the human aspect of her stories, the motivations, fears, and resilience of those who dwell in the shadows. The book was a critical success, praised for its honest reflection on the costs and ethics of paranormal exploration. Yet, even as Maria settled into a quieter life, the impact of that night at Crenshaw House remained with her. She often found herself gazing out her window at dusk, her mind wandering back to the study where she had faced the entity. The house was now permanently sealed, declared too dangerous for public access, but Maria knew that some doors, once opened, could never be fully closed. She lived with the knowledge that the entity still lingered, bound within the shattered mirror, its presence a silent sentinel over the secrets of Crenshaw House. Maria hoped that her actions had been enough to prevent further harm, but she understood the complex nature of her choices. Had she truly done the right thing? Would the entity find another way to influence the world? These questions lingered, unanswered, as Maria continued to write, her words a bridge between the seen and the unseen, her life a balance between light and shadow.